This month, we're talking about respect and appreciation for other people and other nations. You know, all the others, right? And last week, we began by talking about how tolerance is not enough. Not if you want to live a spiritual journey. We have to go deeper than that. We have to do better than just tolerate each other. And this week, we're talking about the role of blessing in opening ourselves up to appreciating other people with different opinions and all the othernesses that may appear. So we're beginning with asking the question, what is a blessing? Now, if you look up in the dictionary, blessing means to confer holiness upon. In other words, to give something holiness, to make something holy. Well, that definition doesn't really work at the Center for Spiritual Living because our teaching, the science of mind, starts with the premise that life is sacred already. So you and I can't make something holy when it is already holy. And holy to us means whole, integrated, spiritually perfect, innocent. So what can we possibly mean when we say something like, I bless that, or I bless you? I think it could mean something like this. I see you just the way you were created. It could mean, I recognize what is already true about you, no matter what it looks like on the outside. No matter what you might say or do. Even if I don't agree with it or don't like it, I am committed to seeing your wholeness. No matter what you're going through, that's a blessing. So I bless you changes me because it's going to affect how I see you from this moment on. The song we just heard Christopher sing, the Irving Berlin song, Count Your Blessings Instead of Sheep. It reminds me of a wonderful practical application for blessings that I use at nighttime, and you're welcome to try it. You get into bed, and then you start to think, who was the last person I had anything to do with? Could be your spouse, your partner, or your neighbor, or somebody at work. And then you bring their face into your imagination. And you say to yourself about that person, John, I love you, I bless you, and I set you free from all expectations. Then you go to the next person, previous person that you had anything to do with. It could be somebody in your work team. It could be somebody you had a difficult time with. And you bring their face into your imagination. You say, Mary, I love you. I bless you. And I set you free from all expectations. And you keep on going back like that. Usually I fall asleep around about person number 5, you know. The thing about it is that this practice calls me back to this awareness of the holiness of life, no matter how things appear to be. And the real nice thing is it changes me, because then when I show up the next day at work or wherever I'm going, I've started this secret love affair with people, and they don't know why. I'm looking at them differently. No matter how things appear to be. Oh, that should be our mantra these days, right? No matter how things appear to be, I know there is a spiritual wholeness in everything, no matter how things appear to be, because things, they can appear to be all sorts of ways, and they do. Disturbing, discordant, disastrous, distasteful, dangerous, and we've got to face it. We have to face the facts of life, and we have to deal with it and show up and do what we must do. And what we can do as students of truth while we're dealing with the world is we could be saying to ourselves silently, I bless you, I bless it. I'm going to the best of my ability, I'm going to drop fear, and I'm going to drop stress and judgment, and I'm going to commit to seeing the wholeness here, no matter how things appear to be. It reminds me of our professional prayer practitioner training. You know, the people who get up here and do prayers and at the end of the service do prayers in the chapel, there's a training. It's a wonderful training. Anybody can do it. And in that training, we learn to pray with people and we act like spiritual coaches with people. So we train people how to have clients for their spiritual coaching. So then whoever comes to you as a spiritual prayer practitioner, as a client, if they come to you, then your job as a prayer practitioner is to see their truth, no matter how they appear to be. Oh, that's a blessing. Whoa. So in the training, we talk about this phrase, we talk about the world of appearances, to remind us not to be hypnotized by appearances. Because if I focus only on appearances, then my energy flows where my attention goes. You like that? My energy flows where my attention goes. Now, I've got a real good experience of this. As you know, I signed up to do the AIDS life cycle from San Francisco to Los Angeles, 545 miles to raise funds for people living with HIV and AIDS. And this will be my 5th year doing it, and I'm getting all excited about it. Then I remembered what it was like the first time I did it, because I was a brand new cyclist. And so I had to learn how to cycle safely. Oh. One of the first things I had to learn was how to pass another cyclist on a busy road. So if you're cycling along and there's another cyclist in front of you, there's a little slower and you want to pass, you need to pass safely, because it's usually on busy roads. So what you got to do is, the first thing, you've got to look over your left shoulder to make sure it is safe to pass. The thing is, for a beginner cyclist, is that when you look over your shoulder, sometimes the bike veers, swerves in the direction you're looking, and that can be dangerous on a busy road. You see where this is going? Huh? So you have to be careful to stay on the path, because your energy flows where your attention goes. So you've got to keep your attention on the path you want to be on, even if you're looking at other things for safety reasons. That's what a blessing is. It means I may be looking at this, but I know where I'm going. Oh, I know which way I'm going. Questions then. Where do you go when you read the news? Do you swerve dangerously into the traffic? Where do you go when you're having a conversation with a loved one or a partner who's disagreeing with you, or somebody who has a different religious point of view or political stance? Where do you go when you're told you're no good or less than, or you shouldn't exist? Do you swerve into the traffic? That could be dangerous. So to bless means something like this: I will not be hypnotized or discouraged or distracted by the way things appear to be. Yeah, I will look at the world and I'll do my duty and I'll show up and I'll speak up, but I am staying on the path of truth and beauty and oneness and peace and love. No matter what, you can't get me off that road. So back to our professional prayer practitioner training. Oh, it's a wonderful 2-year course. So there you are, you go through the course and you get all licensed and you get your first client. They come to you. And then you're sitting down and listening to them, and at some point you realize, as they tell their story, this is not something I like to hear. And you listen, and then you realize, this is not something I agree with politically. And you carry on listening and you realize, this is not something I respect or even want. And in that moment you realize, oh, I'm swerving off the path. And in that moment, I'm no longer a blessing for this person before me. Ooh. See, one of the questions we ask people in the training, in the professional prayer practitioner training, we ask them, who would be a challenging client for you? You know, what's the kind of person you don't want to work with? You know? A thief? A felon? A murderer? A cheater? And you know why we ask? Is because don't you know? That's the person who's coming to see you. That's how it works. And as a spiritual prayer practitioner, we don't have the luxury of discriminating against people because we don't like their politics or their religion or their history or their opinion or their gender or their sexuality or their ethnicity or their crimes or their obsessions or their preferences. Life's like that. I mean, the reality is, I've got opinions about how life should be and how you should show up. But the fact of it, it's far more complicated than my opinions. And you know, roughly 50% of our nation thinks things should go this way. And about another 50% of our nation thinks things should go that way. And holiness doesn't mean 50%. So we better learn how to bless each other in the presence of our differences. Because you know how it goes. While 50% or so is in power, the other isn't. And so it changes next time and next time. We better learn to bless each other. Now, it's been a while since I've read you a story. I've got a story to read to you. It kind of should have a warning. You know, this may cause discomfort. It's by Dr. Alberto Hazan. He's an emergency room physician. He's the author of a series called Dr. Vigilante. Here it goes. What I found most disturbing about the man's arm was not the deep laceration on the underside of his bicep. It was the swastika tattoo next to it. Sir, I said, we'll have you fixed up in no time. I'm going to numb up the wound, irrigate it, then repair the laceration with sutures and send you home on antibiotics and pain medication. The nurse will update your tetanus shot, but before I start, I need to point out that I find your tattoo offensive. He seemed surprised and somewhat startled. Excuse me? I said that I found your tattoo offensive, I repeated matter-of-factly. The man leapt from his stretcher like a bear being awoken prematurely from hibernation and stood in front of me. He was 6'4", 250 pounds of solid muscle. He was a construction worker and cut himself on the job. Staring into the man's eyes, I felt my heart pounding against my chest. He towered over me some 5 inches. His neck veins distended and his eyes bugged. You're a doctor, he said. You're not supposed to tell me that. Despite my inner turmoil, my voice was calm. Sir, you have obviously chosen to exercise your freedom of speech by getting a swastika tattoo on your arm. I'm exercising my own freedom of speech by letting you know that I'm disgusted by your tattoo. This is tense. The man held his gaze on me. The whites of his eyes had turned into the same beet red as his face. Every muscle tensed, but still he didn't move an inch, and neither did I. While the man contemplated his next move, I prepared myself for the inevitable. Tried to preempt his attack and was too close for him to kick me, so I surmised he would strike me with one of his bulging arms, and in the end, there was no blow. The man just stared at me for a few moments, then picked up his jacket and stormed out of the emergency room department. My head was a jumble of thoughts and emotions. I sat at my desk for several minutes, a single question turning over in my mind. Was it wrong for me to voice my opinion. There is no doubt that what I had done was stupid and potentially dangerous. I live in Nevada, where many people choose to exercise the right to carry a concealed weapon, and he's sporting a SWAT sticker. He could have easily been waiting for me in the parking lot after my shift to shoot me. Still, the issue for me was not whether I had made a wise decision by telling the patient how I feel, but whether I had a right to do so in the first place. Although part of me didn't want to treat him, the law is clear about the issue. As an ER doctor, I am mandated to see anyone who walks through the emergency department double doors requesting to see a doctor. I'm also obligated to use my clinical skills to stabilize and treat anyone requiring immediate medical attention, no matter the patient's race, color, gender, sexual orientation, or political affiliation. This goes for anyone, including those patients promoting the torture and death of blacks, homosexuals, Jews, and immigrants. It's easy to put aside my disapproval of these people during critical situations. If a neo-Nazi were having a heart attack or a stroke, or if he presented with a knife sticking out of the side of him, or with any other foreign body lodged anywhere it didn't belong, I would treat him without hesitation and keep my opinions to myself. My first experience dealing with discriminatory behavior in the emergency department happened when I was an intern treating a belligerent drunk with a right periorbital laceration. When I approached the patient, he took a swing at me and landed a hard punch in my abdomen and knocked the wind out of me. Then he called me a dirty Jew. I'm still not sure why he happened to pick on that aspect of my identity, since I'm Venezuelan by birth, French, Moroccan, and Spanish by ethnicity, and American by nationality. And a small part of me wanted to suture his lips closed. But I decided to take a higher path. I sedated him and made my best attempt at a plastic quality laceration repair. Most emergency physicians have witnessed racism in the workplace, whether it's directed at them or another staff member. And sadly, racist patients aren't the worst we get to treat. In my short career, I've had to care for a drunk driver who'd killed the father of 2 infant girls, a father who'd repeatedly raped his daughter, a teenage girl who'd thrown a student down the stairs, and a man who had literally hacked his girlfriend to pieces and who'd been transported to the ER by police because of a small cut to his thumb. I know from my years in the emergency department that some of my colleagues choose to deal with the anger elicited by these patients by practicing passive-aggressive or punitive medicine. And then he gives examples that I don't care to share with you. I understand this response. How can we as physicians not want to fight back, or at least voice our opinions wherever we hear about the deplorable things done by some of our patients? Now, I can't say I've ever resorted to passive-aggressive or punitive medicine. There is no place for that kind of behavior in the emergency department. Even while treating racists like neo-Nazis or rapers or murderers, the issue at stake is not whether I should have the right not to treat a psychopath, but whether it is appropriate to express my opinion about a patient's actions or beliefs in the clinical setting. I felt compelled at the time to tell the neo-Nazi how I felt because I chose that day not to be apathetic. I didn't want to remain silent. I wanted to express my anger at the man, and to do so not by providing him with less than adequate care, but by speaking my mind. In retrospect, though, I understand that voicing my personal beliefs in that situation or in any other like it may not have been the right course of action. As physicians, we are supposed to put our personal opinions aside and treat anyone requiring medical attention to the best of our abilities. As difficult as it is to separate emotions, we ultimately choose how we react. Therefore, we must be mindful of our emotional reactions and do everything possible not to act out of anger. We need to be on a higher plane. And sometimes that may mean ignoring the beliefs and behaviors of our patients as we treat them. We all have our biases, and patients don't come to us for our judgment. They come for care. We are supposed to transcend the ignorance present in everyday life. That's why I was deeply saddened to hear about the story last summer of the Belgian physician who refused to treat a woman with a rib fracture because she was Jewish and who suggested she visit Gaza to get rid of the pain. There's no excuse for that type of conduct from a physician or from anyone at all, for that matter. There is no place for passive-aggressive or punitive medicine. My recent experience with the neo-Nazi highlights the importance of keeping personal beliefs out of the realm of medicine. Physicians should rise above this ignorance. We should be held to a different standard because people's lives are literally in our hands. While we are in the hospital, we shouldn't express any of our political or personal beliefs, not even to each other, and certainly not to our patients. That's what blogs are for. Oh, there's such a lot in that for us. And it reminds me, I don't have to agree with you to bless you. Remember that practice. Call the person into your mind and say, John, and if it's too much to say I love you, say, I see you. I bless you. And I set you free from all expectations. Remember the Buddhist teaching from the Dhammapada, verse 5. Hatred does not cease through hatred at any time. Hatred ceases through love. This, it says, is an unalterable law. Let's go back a moment to that phrase, that statement. Energy flows where my attention goes. Let's connect it all together. Have you ever had that experience like the one I had where you're online and you click on an ad for, like I clicked on an ad for underwear. And the next thing, your newsreel and every email and the whole world is suddenly filled up with underwear. I bring it up because it is an example of how energy flows where my attention goes. It's an example of how consciousness works. Like, these days we've got Alexa and the Google Assistant and, Siri. Hey Siri, are you listening? She's being quiet today. What can I help you with? Oh, go ahead. Thank you. Always listening. Always paying attention, even though they say she's not. Listening all the time, And then we speak the thoughts that come from our hearts or from our fears. She's listening. And then she starts to show things to me that match what I'm interested in. It occurred to me, so if I want a different newsreel on social media or in life, maybe one small thing I can do, can take action on, is to become interested in what I want to see more of. Still, not all of us are doctors or professional prayer practitioners. We still have to be in the world. We do have to discuss with friends, neighbors, and loved ones and people we disagree with. We have to discuss politics, religions, life, child rape, all sorts of things. But we can learn from this. And we can also learn from Megan Phelps Roper, a former member of the Westboro Baptist Church. Her grandfather was the founder of the church, and she left with her sister. Now she advocates for the coming together, healing of the division that exists between political and religious divides. She gives us some advice for how to navigate through this world of conversation and stay on the path. Here are the points of her advice. The first is, don't assume bad intent. It just turns people off. It turns us off. It can stop us from really listening to understand why it is they believe what they believe. And she says when we assume bad intent, we forget that the person we're talking to is a human being with a lifetime of experience that shaped their mind to where they are. And if we get stuck on that first wave of anger, that conversation is very difficult to move past. She suggests we try to assume a good, or if that's too much, a neutral intent. But for students of the Center for Spiritual Living, Science of Mind, we have to do better than that. We do. We're going to have to start from assuming the sacredness of all life in the person we are talking to. And while we're talking, to say silently, I love you. I bless you. I set you free from my expectations. The second advice piece is to ask questions, because this helps people feel like they are being heard, respected, listened to. And it can help us understand where they're coming from. It also gives people the unhurried chance to point out flaws in our position according to them. And it shows that you're genuinely open to learning about another way, another point of view. And while you're doing this kind of conversation, you can say silently to yourself, I love you, I bless you, and I set you free from expectations. And the third bit of advice is to stay calm. Oh, this takes practice and patience, but it's worth it. It's powerful. And one of the things I learned about staying calm is to trust silence, to allow it, to take breaks in the communication without ending the discussion. And even at that moment when you feel your frustration rising up in moments of challenge, to say silently to yourself, I love you, I bless you, and I set you free from expectations. And finally, she suggests that we make the argument. And what that means is, instead of assuming that everyone agrees with you or should agree with you because of the rightness and correctness of your point of view and how obvious it should be to everyone, share instead how you came to your point of view, because you may discover you don't know. And if someone doesn't get the way I think or the way I feel, that's my opportunity to explore that and explain that, even if we don't get to agreement. And I can say silently to myself about both of us, I love you, I bless you, and I set you free from expectations. These are great skills for staying on the path while engaging in the world and not veering off dangerously into the traffic. And not only is it good to practice with people who have radically different conclusions about the way life works, but they're excellent to practice with the people who are closest to us. I invite you to take a moment to move into prayer with me by breathing in and exhaling and letting your eyes close for a moment of silent contemplation. As I breathe into this sacred moment, I'm aware of the presence of the divine. I call it the all good. It is the divinity that is the truth of all that is. It is the field of infinite possibility that is everywhere present. And as such, it is ever available. And I contemplate it in this moment. In this moment of prayer, I feel the blessing of knowing that I am part of this divine presence. I'm remembering that there can be no separation between my spirit and the spirit of that which is everywhere present. The Spirit of the Most High is my truth. And as I become aware of this deeply, as true about me, I have a profound sense of it being true in this moment for all sentient beings. And the words resonate in my mind. There is only one life. That life is God. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. The energy generated by these words and thoughts of prayer help me to realize, as if remembering again, my true nature. That I am an expression of the divine. And that as I go out to greet my day, this feeling of oneness accompanies me like a radiant light. I know the light was always present, but in this moment I'm realizing it is there. I'm remembering that as I move through the world, it radiates, touching all people. And so I claim for all the people I encounter that the same radiant light emanates from them, in them, connecting us all together. This allows me to stand strong and to keep moving safely and courageously on the path, to do what is mine to do, to help where it is mine to help, to share what is mine to share, and to be the blessing that I am. Every time I pray this way, I sense a celebration, gratitude welling up in me. The words in my mind feel alive, and they touch something in my heart. So I settle into this feeling of thanksgiving for a moment, contemplating all that I am grateful for. I'm rejoicing too that this divine presence, according to its law, is listening in on me as itself expressing this prayer, and even now preparing to reflect back to me more of that which I am interested in. And so I let myself feel the release of knowing something wonderful is happening for me and for all sentient beings. I rededicate myself to stay on that path, no matter how things appear to be. I bring this spiritual mind treatment to a close by saying gently, and so it is.